Debo didn't go live tonight, so I'll try. Maybe I can steal a viewer. Sorry, Debo. Snooze, you lose, man. All right. Let's see. Ba, ba, ba. Anybody in? Nope, nobody's there yet. I don't get very many people on YouTube live. I need to do it more. It's not working on my phone. Having some issues. Frank, what's up, man? I was trying to go back out there and post on those guys I was live. I don't know if anybody will come over. What you got going, Frank? I don't have anything even prepared, any ideas to talk about or anything, man. I just, I was going to watch Debo, but he was, I guess he had to cancel tonight. Oh, look, there's me. Crazy. Let me make one comment. Frank says he has a day of catching 4-inch largemouth. Tanks, brother. Dude, at Orange Lake, I saw on the, I guess on Instagram, I think it was, somebody caught a 14 at Orange, and about a month ago, they caught a 16. Rich, what's up, man? I was just talking about Orange Lake. It's about 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes east of, or west of me, and there's been a bunch of big fish. I'm gonna as soon as it cools off a little bit. I've been taking a break. The heat's been bothering me. All right, stealing Debo's people. Hey, 7 folks, welcome aboard. So I was just talking about Orange Lake, 15, 14, 16 pound fish coming out of there. Which is interesting because it is like, let's see, what is the name of that lake? I can't think of it right now. In Texas, the one that's throwing off the big fish like that. O.H. Ivy. O.H. Ivy's throwing off fish like that. And the reason is because it drained, it had a bad drought there, and the water went way, way down. So it was almost dry, but then they got a lot of rain, and I think it may have been like a couple hurricanes or something blew up in there. I can't remember what the guy was telling me, but anyway, the lake was almost dry, and then it filled back up. So O.H. Ivy is like a 20,000 acre lake. Hey, thanks, Jared, man, appreciate you. So what they're experiencing at O.H. Ivy and at Orange Lake, because the exact same thing happened down the street at Orange Lake. It almost dried up a while back. Some guy was telling me about it. The game warden was telling me that lake almost dried up, but then it filled back up. So it's exactly the same thing as what we're experiencing at Sugar Hill Outdoors Pond, right? I'm getting bass, super amounts of bass growth. So I got to quit reading and trying to talk. I can't do both. They're experiencing new lake effect. And new lake effect is just that. It's this weird effect that happens to new lakes. And you get just excellent growth, just stupid growth, right? Like I'm getting, like, you know, I've got northern fish 2.5 pounds this season in our little example pond. And I've seen fish grow faster than that in new lakes. One good example of new lake effect, we've talked about it several times. For anybody, there's got a few people here that don't follow, but that's cool. Anyway, it was a 13-pound bass sampled in Georgia, and it was a new lake. It was 100 acres, and it was built for trophy bass management. Bulgy PFA, which stands for Public Fishing Area in South Georgia, is what it's called. So they built it, and they tagged all the bass that they stocked in it. And year 3, they were doing an electrofishing survey, and they caught the fish. No, or was it year 2? No, it was year 3. The end of year 3 in the fall, they usually run their samples in the fall. It's after the growing season's over with, because fish only grow when the water's warm. So they're running their fall survey, and they capture a 3-year-old bass that was almost 8 pounds, which is great. You know, that's excellent growth. But that's new lake effect growth, right? Thank you, Jared. I appreciate the subscription, brother. So the interesting part, to continue that, finish that story, the interesting part about that 8-pound, that 3-year-old 8-pounder, is they sampled it the next fall, the fourth year, at the end, after the end of its 4th growing season, and that fish was 13.1. So that'll give you a real good idea of the kind of fish that new lake effect can produce. Just stupid amounts of growth. So when I tell people to drain their pond down, that's what I'm trying to capture. If I've never owned a lake myself. If I owned one, I would drain it and restock it every 10 years just to capture new lake effect. Maybe 12, maybe 8. It would depend on how they're doing. But that's kind of how that works. If you can control it and own it. Now, if you can't, like a 20,000 acre lake, O.H. Ivy or Orange Lake over here in Florida, whatever, you can be aware, at least we can be aware of it and know that when those big lakes get drained and fill back up, we're going to get a new lake effect pop, and we know where to go fishing. I'm going to run back through. I can't see the comments. They flash up here, but they don't stay up here on you when you're on YouTube. I got to start learning how to use the live stream, or what's it called? StreamYard. I got to learn StreamYard. Let me make sure we got no questions. You guys any new lake effect questions, you can let me know. That light is brutal. Same with the other Jared. I don't think there's any. Oh, and see, I don't like that either. All right. If you guys, all right, here comes a question. What's the difference between a drawdown and the complete emptying of a pond? I didn't even catch your name on that. Thank you for the question. It faded away. So a drawdown is done in the wintertime usually. And you might hear it called winter drawdown. And they actually do it at the lake behind my house, Rodman Reservoir. And the reason why they do it is for aquatic weed control and water quality improvement. Because when you get a lot of vegetation, seasonal drawdown, right? When you get a lot of vegetation rotting on the bottom, the bacteria that makes that vegetation rot is oxygen consuming. So in lakes like this one that really have excessive aquatic vegetation problems, by draining the water down in the winter, it's important to do it in the winter too. You really don't want to do it in the summertime. Fish aren't growing as much as in the wintertime. Actually, the fish aren't growing at all in the wintertime. And that's safer. And the water holds more oxygen in the wintertime as well. So it's much safer to pull the lake down and let the fish stay in the lowered water when it's cold for those reasons. But the drawdown will expose the plants to the oxygen in the atmosphere, which is significantly higher than in the water, and will help break that plant material down. So when you fill the lake back up, it has much less detritus, is what that's called, just organic stuff rotting on the bottom. And that's a significant significant improvement in oxygen consumption, which is called BOD, biological oxygen demand. And BOD just means everything in the lake that's using the oxygen, anything alive, biological, which would be bacteria, fishes, plants. So a winter drawdown's done for that. And it's a good way too, when you expose the soil to the cold and it freezes, it will kill, it will bust up the seeds that the aquatic plants put out that season, right? So a winter drawdown will significantly reduce the amount of chemicals you have to use in your lake. And that's why I use them. That's the biggest reason I've used it in ponds. But the problem is you have to have a really good drain system, one that functions really well, and you have to be pretty close to the pond because you got to do it right. You got to kind of do it right when it's going to freeze, when you know it's going to freeze. And sometimes, some winters it doesn't freeze, so the winter drawdown doesn't work very well. It'll work for the rotting the bottom away, but it won't work for killing those seeds. You'll have a lot of seed, a lot of plant growth the next year. Compared to a regular drawdown, like if you were a winter drawdown, you would draw the lake down, but you wouldn't drain it completely. You leave some water in the basin to keep the fish in. A complete drawdown, you just let it go. There's no saving the fish. And when you do that, most people think all the fish are going to be floating, dead on the bottom, but they actually really don't usually. Most lakes and ponds are designed to be drained. So the drain system's down at the deepest part. And about the time their bellies are in the mud and their backs are in the sun, they're dry, they'll go down that pipe and they'll run with the water flow on the way out. They kind of know instinctively that this is bad and we need to go. And they'll, when you drain a lake, if it's built right, you won't have a lot of dead fish in the bottom. They'll run out the back, run with the water. But the complete drawdown would be done for probably for dam repairs or dredging. Sometimes I'll pull them out and just dig the whole bottom of them out and stuff like that. So that's a couple of the differences. I hope that answered that. Let me go back and check the questions again. Good evening, Jared. Good evening, Midwest. What's up, brother? And thanks for joining, everyone. 13, that's a good one. If you got any other questions, fire away. I've got a pile of, we can talk a little bit about relative weight and how it works. So when I talk about relative weight, I talk about this chart. And to read this, got another one coming in. And it disappeared. Really don't like that. How long would it take to have a sizable fish in a pond that's been drained down almost completely? Well, that would go back to kind of what I just talked about in New Lake Effect. I don't know if you were in here, but if I drain a lake down, I would prefer, if I'm going to drain it, just to get rid of the fish and start it over. That's the smartest way to do it, because then, and I don't know if you're following my page, but I've got a new pond that I've been stocking, and I stocked the bass. They were 3 to 5 inches last May, and some of the fish are over 3 pounds right now. So it doesn't take bass long to grow in a new lake or a new pond that's been drained and refilled. And they grow so fast that I actually encourage people to do it, but they never do. They never take that advice. I've done it, but for the amount of times that I've suggested it compared to the amount of times that people have actually pulled the trigger and done that is very low. Most people will not do that. But I can tell you this, for the people who did do that, and if you want to follow along, all the stuff's here on YouTube since the beginning of this. All the videos are there. You can go back through and watch them. But for all the people that have taken that advice and drained the lake down and restocked it, every single one said, I really wish I would have done this a long time ago. So take that for what it's worth. All right, Midwest. How often do I use fountains, bubblers, or aeration? It's usually cost prohibitive. Yes, it is usually cost prohibitive. It's actually it depends, man. That's a good question. And to answer it short, not often. I don't use that stuff much. And I guess let's just use a real world example, right? That's the easiest way. So this is a long time ago. God, probably in the 90s. or maybe around 2000. This surgeon, he was like a brain surgeon or something. He was in Cumming, Georgia, I believe that was, over there. Anyway, he bought a new place, and it was a big hundreds of acres of land, and it had a pond right behind a beautiful farmhouse that was redone. And it was all in pasture. And it was a 3-acre pond. And he stocked it. And he had all the money to do everything that he wanted. So he did the whole thing. I didn't do that work for him, though. I don't know who did that work for him, but it wasn't me. So he calls me up in August, and he says his fish have died. I said, okay. And his fish died the year before in August, and his fish died the year before in August. This is the third year in a row he had a pretty complete fish kill that he completely restocked again. He spent a bunch of money restocking fish every time they died, and every August they died. So I said, well, that's pretty interesting. Let's go take a look at it. So I get there, and it's exactly what I expected. It's the color of pea soup. And what you're looking at when the water is the color of pea soup is a phytoplankton bloom. And it's so many microscopic plants floating in the water that turns that water dark green. And that's not bad until there's too much of it. And this was terrible because you couldn't see an inch down into the water. You need at least 12 inches of visibility. And that'll go back to what we were talking about earlier about oxygen. If you have too much plankton in the water, too many plants in the water, at night plants use oxygen and will use up all the oxygen and kill your fish. And that's exactly what was happening to this guy. The problem was the nutrients coming into the pond that were creating that oxygen bloom were in the soil all around the pond because he bought that place from a chicken farm that had been a chicken farm for almost 100 years. So they had just been pushing chicken waste off for 82 years or something. And all that waste was in the ground, all the nutrients, all the phosphorus and nitrogen, it was super saturated. So his yard was beautiful, you know, it was absolutely perfect. But his pond was too green. It was too fertile, and it was killing his fish. So he knew from the other consultant that he was working with that it was an oxygen depletion problem in the summertime when the water gets hot, the oxygen levels get lower, and then there was too much plankton, and that was killing his fish. Biological oxygen demand was too high at night, and it killed everything. So he went and bought fountains, 2 of them, big ones. He went and bought bubblers, 10 of them, a lot. I mean, they were everywhere in that pond. He even had liquid oxygen tank on the dock that would bubble pure oxygen into that water to try to keep his fish alive. And it didn't work. Because when it's like, how do I explain it? It's almost like, it's like a vacuum pulling all the oxygen out of the water, right? And the demand for that is so big that in that situation, you can't agitate the water enough to keep it from getting it pulled out of the water, I guess. And it's hard to explain, but I guess that's the best way. I don't know. Maybe I can think of a better way. Because I don't know, it's hard to visualize because it's in a solution. Frank. Yeah. Skate park. That's probably what it turned into, man. Actually, he probably turned it into, he probably filled it, made it into his yard. Because, you know, why would you want a pond that, you know, couldn't hold any fish? What's going to happen, actually, it's a good point. If his pond won't hold a fish population, it's just going to be a mosquito pit. Bluegill are really good at eating mosquito larvae and keep the mosquitoes down. You'll see it, too, on your real weedy ponds. When the bluegill can't get up around the edges well, when it's like filamentous algae is usually the worst for it. They can't hunt those mosquito larvae, so it creates areas in the pond where the mosquito larvae can hatch, and that's a real hassle. You'll see it around weedy ponds. I got something. All right. Fountains, got that one covered. Super Gent's coming through with one. How big of an impact do grass carp and common carp have on a body of water with minimal plant life? Got a 190-acre lake that's full of them. but the large smallie population has dropped. Well, I can't speak to you about managing smallmouth bass because I've always managed bass in Georgia and in the Southeast, and I've never managed smallies. But I wouldn't expect that it would be any different. I can't think of any reason why it would be any different than a largemouth bass population. So I'll tell it to you from a largemouth population perspective, okay? And it's a misunderstanding of the environment, right? The plant life is not necessary to grow fish. And I can use many examples, but I'll use the example that I have here that you can go and look. Go look at the pond that I just stocked last year, and I've got 3-pound bass right now. There's no weeds in it. There's grass carp in it, right? I don't have to have plant material and that type of habitat to grow trophy bass. That is not critical. And as a matter of fact, that's why it's not there, because if I get a situation where the plant life overgrows the pond, it does exactly what I just described that phytoplankton bloom does. It takes all the oxygen out of water and kills my fish. So having plant life in that pond on YouTube and Instagram is a risk for me, because it gives me the risk of my fish dying in this heat, especially a year like this where it gets super hot and the water temperature in like the mid 90s, just dumb hot. That's when your BOD just goes through the roof and kills your fish. So I put grass carp in that pond to keep that from happening to me. I've seen that happen. It's not happening to me. It's not ruining my life on here. I'm doing good, showing people how this works. I don't need my fish to die. And I think that's where the misconception lies. I'll get to that question, Floyd, there. That's a good one, brother. So I see that a lot. I see the guys go, you put the grass carp in and it ruined the fishing. Okay, that's not what ruined the fishing. What ruined the fishing was letting the weeds get out of control. Then the forage one of two things happen in that. Your forage will take over and then create a situation where the smallmouth can't hunt, or the largemouth, whatever, and they'll lose weight and they'll look like crap for a while after that. And it depends on how long the lake was stunted out that way, how long they let the weeds stay that way. Or it could go another way where it wipes them. Like if it stays bad for a long time, it creates, and it depends on the plant that's there as well, but it creates a situation where it's a perfect environment for the bass fry to trap everything against those weeds, and you have too much bass fry survival. Because normally bass fry are eaten by the larger bass. Most of them, 99% of them, get just consumed by another fish, by another bass, once they grow out. They don't make it to 10 inches usually. If you look at the numbers, the statistics for a bass going to 10 inches is not good. Most of them die, and they get consumed by other bass. So when the other bass can't consume the fry because of the weed problem, you get too many fry, and then generally the weed problem gets corrected, and now you've got a situation where you've got so many bass fry, just so many 4 to 6 inch fish, that you've created a situation that the lake can't support that many, and then they get skinny. And that's actually what I was talking about. This guy is my relative weight chart. So I compare the weights of the bass to this chart. So like a 12 and a half, to read this chart, let me show you, like a 12 and a half inch fish, split the difference right here is 1 pound, right? And that's easy to remember. 12 and a half, 1, So if I go to a lake and do a shock survey, or even just catch fish with a fishing rod, and say I catch 20, that's a pretty decent number of fish to catch for a fisherman or a shock boat in a short amount of time. Not for a fisherman. If you can catch 20, you're pretty good. But if you went 2 or 3 times, you got 20 fish, you've got yourself a pretty decent data set. And I'll start comparing them to these numbers. Are they above or below? Are the 20 inch fish that I catch above or below 4.5 pounds? Okay. I've got a smallmouth one sitting right there. Let's get it out. That'll help you. I forgot I just printed that thing out. Where'd they go? We can use a real world example. Here's the smallmouth guy. All right. So smallmouth, a 12-inch smallmouth, standard weight is 8.8, 13-inch fish is 1.1. All right. So look at your fish, weigh and measure them. And when to do it right, you have to close the fish's mouth and butt it to the end of the board, and then take their tail and pinch it and give it a little fan like that. And the furthest tip place that tail touches is the length of the fish. And if the tail's cut, you measure it to the cut. You don't invent anything or rubbed off or whatever. You measure it to the actual, you'll make a note on there and say, hey, there was some tail fin damage or whatever. So you know that fish is probably going to not weigh right? It's because its tail was cut. So back to this guy. I would start comparing the weights of your smallmouth to these weights. And with that information, I can give you a lot better. Because if you have too many smallmouth, they'll be under these weights. And if you don't have enough, they'll be over. Unless there's some other predator in there affecting their forage as well. And on 190 acres, there damn sure could be. Jared, these stickers are available. If you go to my, it's linked on my Instagram account in the top up there, what do they call that, description or whatever, on Instagram. The Spotify account's linked right there, and you can pick them up. They're $7. Thanks, Superman. Appreciate you, bro. Get you straightened out. Okay, back to questions. Yeah, Midwest. I talk about that guy a lot. You got a good memory, man. I cannot read today. My eyes are getting bad, y'all. Can you run a small stream into a pond for aeration? Well, actually, most of the ponds that I ever managed had streams running in because they built all the ponds in Georgia for erosion control. The government built them for free back in the 50s and 60s. If you had land and wanted a pond, they would build it for you to control erosion. Georgia has a real bad erosion problem, and has for 300 years. The red clay in Georgia should be 8 feet under soil. The reason it's not there is all that soil ran off into the Gulf of Mexico when they clear cut Georgia right when the settlers came, and they ruined it. And so Georgia's completely different now than it was 300 years ago. But that actually started the University of Georgia, which is the oldest public university in this country. 1785, I think, and the forestry school where I went to school, and all that poor forestry practice is the reason why we're sitting here talking about all this stuff right now. The forestry school. That's where I went to school. All right. Okay, Floyd has got a question here. Do you think smallmouth bass can exhibit the same growth rates as largemouth, given they have the same conditions like Sugar Hill? I don't think so. I think, well, for one, well, no. I'm positive no, because how do I articulate that? The growing season, you have to have colder water for smallmouth. So you can't have as many days growth in areas that smallmouth, can survive, because it's cooler there. So no, you won't catch me. But I also don't think that smallmouth grow like largemouth. I think it takes a longer time for smallmouth to grow. But again, I think that probably has to do a lot with are they stunted? Are there too many of them? Are they being harvested? Or whatever. You would be able to use this chart that same way. Are you catching, like, let's use that 13 right there, right? If you're catching 13-inch smallies that are 0.9, 0.85, right? Somewhere down there, they're stunted, or there's something affecting their forage. Go look at the smallies in the Great Lakes, where the gobies have taken over and given them perfect habitat. Those smallies are absolute units. Go look at them. They're bigger than the standard, right? There's the other end of that chart. So go look at those beast smallies those guys are catching in there. They're bigger, consistently bigger than the standard weight, because they have the gobies impacted the system to where it messed up all the other predators except the smallmouth. And now you've got a great smallmouth fishery, but like basically all the other fish in those Great Lakes, I don't know which one it is. Michigan, maybe all of them. I don't know. I've never fished there, so I don't really know. Back to messages. Buying one? Oh, thanks, brother. Even in Tennessee or Arkansas? Yeah, I would think so, man. I mean, it's, my Sugar Hill Outdoors pond is 150 miles south of Tennessee, I guess. No, maybe not that far. Let's see, how far is it south? Well, it's right near Atlanta. How far is Atlanta south of Tennessee? I don't know, 80 miles or something. Yeah, there goes that order. Thanks, bro. Get it in the mail to you on Monday. Cash money. Well, I'll be retiring now. Thank you, boys. I'm done. Yeah, just playing. Just a goof. Don't want the thing to ring again. Let's go back and check our questions. Yeah, fish growth is crazy, man. You get all kinds of things that disrupt you. I remember one time though, I had a pond I stocked for a guy. It was like a little 1.5 acre pond, and he wanted nice bass in it, So we did the same thing that here one Midwest has got. He's got the skinny on the guts on smallmouth in Michigan are bulging. Yeah, it's a trade-off, right? Exactly. Yellow perch are done. Same thing happened to Lake Lanier, right? I remember back in the day, that was in Atlanta. It's a big lake north of the city there, and it's about, I think, 30,000 acres or so. And blueback herring got in it. So I can remember when there was herring not in the lake and now in the lake. Well, blueback herring are bad egg eaters. And nobody knew. I can remember the biologist talking about it back then. Nobody knew. They were just giving everybody warnings. Don't bring them. They're spreading around. They're getting all over the place. And don't bring them. Don't use them as bait. All that kind of thing. But they got there. Somebody went over and threw them in. So, like I said, the biologist didn't know what was going to happen to the lake. Well, it just so happened that it helped the spotted bass. The blueback herring, I guess, spawned in a different location and at a different time that didn't impact the spotted bass reproduction. So there's plenty of herring, and the spotted bass have taken to it, and now there's really, really big, spotted bass in Lake Lanier. But on the flip side of that coin, there's the only white bass that are left in Lake Lanier are the ones that they stock. And we used to be great, man. About the time the dogwoods would bloom, you could go to the river and the white bass would be running. And I mean, just catch them, man. Just burn them up on a MEP spinner. Just crush them. Just every cast. It was so fun. And now they're gone. So that'll give you an idea of, what that stuff is like, how that stuff works. There's always let's see. Frank says, does my retirement plans include taking Canadians find themselves in Florida? Sure, man. Come on. Any old time. The gobies are nest raiders? Yeah, that makes sense. Damn it. All right. Do local insect hatches impact bass growth? That's a good question, too. So, insects are in all water. We have aquatic insects in the pond. They're actually 50% of a bluegill's diet is aquatic insects. And they're very important in streams and in ponds to the health of the fishery. So they're a natural part of the food chain. So no, they don't hurt anything at all. And in fact, really, I did electrofishing surveys for over 20 years. Had my own boat, and ran it as much as anybody would pay me to run it. I don't do it anymore. I don't really need it that much anymore. I'm pretty good at it, so I don't really need to do that. And quite frankly, it's a really expensive boat to maintain and keep, and I don't get that much work with it anyway, so it's okay. But while doing all that electrofishing work over those 2 decades, I have had 10-pound bass, one in this hand and one in this hand, 3 times. And all 3 times, those ponds, or actually they'd be considered lakes, but one was 24 acres, that'd be a pond. They had massive mayfly hatches, and they also had staggeringly large red ear shellcracker. And I don't know the correlations or the causality or anything of how or why that those lakes had that, but those were just observations that I made into my notes. There were a lot of mayflies coming off in the springtime on those good lakes, and there were a lot of shellcracker. So whenever I see somebody catching big shellcracker, I ask them where the hell they caught them. It's like, what's going on there, bro? All right, let me scroll back through here. I have got to get some glasses, dude. No, back to the smallmouth. Oh, sure, Rich, man. You're most welcome. Anyways, 37 minutes live. That's pretty good. Making a mess. You guys got anything else for me? People are kind of dropping out, so I figure I'm getting boring. There's 8 of us left, though. That's pretty good for me. I can't be cool like Debo and have hundreds of thousands of followers, People kind of get triggered by the things that I say sometimes. It's interesting. It's happened for a long time, like 30 years. Like, I'm used to it now. I don't let it affect me, but I tried doing all this online before when Facebook and YouTube first came out. But it didn't work because welcome back, Midwest. The negativity was tough back in probably 2010, 11. I started trying this before. And, it's because I'm talking about lake management, and most people's information comes from pro bass fishing. And those pro bass fishing guys, well, they don't listen to any of us, that's for sure. They got big egos and a lot of money, and they drive fast boats, and they know everything already. You can't tell them anything. But I'll still stand firm. I don't tell people how to win a fishing tournament because I don't fish in fishing tournaments. And I would certainly appreciate pro fishermen to stop telling people how to manage lakes because they don't manage lakes. But, that message is not going through to them. So, they've done more harm to bass fishing by preaching catch and release everywhere and getting people into a cult-like following of catch and release. They've done more to hurt bass fishing than anybody. They've done more to hurt fishing than anybody I've ever seen. And they won't listen. Even when I tell them, look, this is how I grow a fish in a 2-acre pond. This is how it works. Basic 2-fish predator-prey system. They want to argue about that. And that stuff's not my opinion, man. That's science, man. They taught me that at college, So you're not arguing against me, right? If you're going to argue about this stuff, none of this is my opinion. This is all what I learned to do at a professional program at a university, All right. This is a job. This was my job. This is my job now still. For 30 years, I've been doing this. Right. And they got the nerve to come tell me, a degreed biologist that's worked in the field for 30 years, that I'm wrong with absolutely no data. So it's staggeringly stupid to me, but I don't know what else to do but just keep doing my job and keep telling people the truth. And maybe one day people will listen to the truth. But these dudes that are going around telling me that catch and release is how you manage trophy bass fisheries might as well be trying to tell me the earth is flat too. They are wrong. That is not how that works. Hadn't worked that way for me in 30 years. You better keep your bass population under 40 fish per acre. Once you start catching and releasing everything, let the bass population go to 60 fish per acre, forget it. Your fish aren't growing worth a crap. And they don't even know how to tell how many bass there are per acre. And one guy, what is his name? Randy something. He got mad at me. Talking about he manages a 40-acre lake and his lake is fine. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the average relative weight of the fish in your lake for the last 3 years? Dude doesn't even know what relative weight is. Doesn't have a clue, right? This might be written in Chinese to his dumb ass. He's got no data to back up what he said. Now, see, when you ask me, Shan, how do you know that 40 bass per acre is the right stocking? Well, because I've done it a lot. And we've done it live here. So go back over there and look. I got fish 2.5 pounds in 12 months. And tell me I'm wrong. I don't get it. I have facts. Isn't it funny that many of the same outdoors and understand selective harvest for deer? Yeah, exactly the same thing, bro. See, that's why I like you, Midwest. You're a smart dude. Right? Telling me that catch and release is how to manage bass population is exactly the same thing as hunting your deer with paintball guns. That shit don't work. What's the survival rate of fish that is released with a hook in it? Well, yeah, you probably should try to get the hook out, but if you can't get the hook out and you leave it, that's a hard question because it depends on what it punctured and how deep it went. You know, are we looking at just past, like, you know, in there a little, or are we looking at can't see it anymore? You know, now the thing about bass is they are tough, man. They are incredibly tough, but don't worry so much about it either. That's another thing. That's another thing that catch and release has created. It's okay to gut hook one. It's okay if one bass dies. It's okay to keep it. Just if you gut hook it, just keep it and make fish tacos. Throw it in the woods, let the coons eat it. It's not going to waste. That's the great thing about the earth. Nothing goes to waste. Everything in the world will consume that fish and make use of it. You haven't wasted anything. You haven't hurt anything. And quite frankly, in most of the lakes, after riding around an electrofishing boat, they need some bass harvest. You've done the lake a favor by gut hooking that fish and hopefully it will die, right? To give you an idea of what needs to be correct, like say you got a 10-acre pond and you catch and release it for 5 years. It's going to stunt. I know, I've watched it happen thousands of times. Yeah, that's that dude. I don't know how to say his last name. Yeah, he's a jackass. You can quote me on that. Sure, Superman. You're cool, bro. Appreciate you, bro. Let me check these questions. Survival rate on gut hook fish. Probably not good on that one. We talked on that one, though. How many of the 40... I'm sorry, man. These stupid thing. I'm going to StreamYard tomorrow and figuring that shit out. How many of the 40 per acre live? Jared, are you meaning like how many of them live after I stock them? Because all of them live. I'm putting them in, like, I've had a bluegill population established for a year, so there's no fish in there that can mess with those bass. and the bluegill just I fed them and just I stocked it with thousands of fish per acre, and then I fed them for an entire year, let them spawn in there. So that thing was just full of bluegill, and then stock 40 per acre, and they all live. They don't die. If they died, you would see it in the catch rates, because once you start dropping below 40 fish per acre, like 35 fish per acre is as dead low as I want to go. Because once you get below right in there, the fishing gets really hard. Like, you just don't have enough fish. So you'll also notice this trend too in lakes that produce big fish that have high relative weights. The catch rates will be lower. The fish aren't as hungry. The fish are well fed. The fish are also will be keyed in on certain things. They'll be a well-fed, healthy fish is harder to catch. That makes sense, right? That's what I'm trying to say. All right. Oh, you heard they just evolve in the stomach? Yeah. Yeah. I've seen all those things too, man. And I really think it's like he said he's seen hooks in the fish that are corroding and things like that. Yeah, it happens though, man. I categorize all that kind of crap under it happens. Okay, like, where did you catch it? Like, did you kill a fish in a 20,000 acre lake? All right, that's the point that I wanted to make. So we got a 10 acre lake and stunted out with bass. I didn't finish that story, and we want to fix that. Okay, so what you're gonna have to do to fix that is go out there and catch 20 bass an acre that are in your slot. In the slot means you'll see them. You don't want to be keeping any big fish if you happen to have any at all. You'll throw the bigs back, but you'll keep those ones in the slot, and that slot's usually from 11 to 14 inches. So around 12 inches, around 1 pound, we're going to go harvest those fish most of the time. That's where they are. That's where they're stunted. So we got to remove 20 of them per acre. That's in a 10 acre pond. That's 200 fish. And we got to do that 2 years in a row. That's 400 bass out of a 10 acre pond to correct a 10 acre pond's bass crowded situation, right? Now, extrapolate that to 10,000 acres. You don't have enough bass harvesters to come close to touching that. You could kill every bass you caught in a 10,000 acre lake around here. It don't matter. Not one lick. It won't even change the balance of the fishery, right? Because there's a perfect example. Let's go back to our 10 acre pond. Let's say the bass are stunted, and we don't get that 20 pounds of fish per acre out, but we do get some. We get 10 pounds of fish per acre out. You know what happens to the fish growth? Nothing. The reproduction replaces it, and they stunt right back out. It's really easy to grow a fish to 12 inches. They'll get there pretty fast, and they'll stunt right back out on you. So you've got to get enough of them out to reduce the hunting pressure on the forage base to get it to recover, and then you'll start getting your bass growth again. That's how that works. Midwest says he's caught largemouth offsets passing out. yeah, they'll pass them. They sure will pass them. I think they can puke them too. Puke them up sometimes. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not too worried about like fish mortality. Hook mortality is what we call that, and I don't really worry about hook mortality. It's just not enough. I mean, because you have natural mortality too. That's something nobody ever talks about. They see a fish floating in the water, and it's got to be a chemical. It's got to be a fisherman's problem. They got to find somebody to blame. The sky has got to be, the fish is dead. The sky's got to be falling. It couldn't be, it's a living thing and everything dies. Especially since there's only one, Or is there 100? Is there 1,000? Does it look like every fish in the pond is dead? Yeah, that's a problem. One dead fish, that doesn't bother me. That's not anything to fire the alarms up over, Like I said, until you get 200 bass out of a 10-acre pond, you haven't even changed the bass population a little. So that's the kind of things I'm talking about. Those pro dudes don't know that because they've never done it. You think that guy's ever caught fish, removed bass out of a pond, and then measured the next year to see if his bass got bigger? Obviously not, because if he did, he wouldn't be talking to me this way. Clown. Let's see. We've got back to Michigan, I think. Predator-prey ratios disrupted. The gobies released. Yeah, man, that's a competing species problem. And the thing about that is it's never coming back. You know, it's done. It's that way forever. Once you introduce like these guys, the problem we're having in Georgia and around is the spotted bass. You know, there are people taking spotted bass and throwing them everywhere, putting them in their live wells and carrying them other places. Which is a perfect example. You shouldn't do that. Don't ever do that. Don't stock bass anywhere. Put them back in the lake they grew in because the balance is correct. I saw a guy on YouTube today. I'm moving this bass to my pond. Well, your pond sucks, dude. You caught any 9-pound bass there? No. Why you put 9-pound bass in it? You know what's going to happen to that 9-pound bass? It's going to be about 7 pounds, starve and die because it didn't grow there. Because that system can't produce a 9-pound bass. That's the part they don't get. I cannot drill that into their head. Some of these lakes, when they're stunted like that, when the stunted thing that we're talking about ain't growing. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't have a few. A few bass get lucky and get more food and grow, and then they just eat the other stunted out bass. And that's when the glide baits started doing real well way back in the day. Because, you know, for me, they were mimicking those stunted bass. And just the bass had never seen lures like that. And it, you know, the glide baits and the big baits, you know, work real well. And I think now I'm starting to hear guys talk about like lure resistance on the fish are getting used to the bigger baits too. And the bigger bait fishermen are starting to learn about lure resistance. But again, we can see all that in our ponds. Like you used to be able to go out to the pond, you could throw any lure in there and you could catch 4 or 5 fish in 10 minutes last year this time. Those fish had never seen a lure. They were brand new to the pond. They had no idea. You're not doing that now. Go out there and throw a lure now. You're going to work for them. They figured it out. They don't like being caught and they avoid you. And the more you fish for them, the smarter they'll get. They're pretty sharp little critters. Well, I don't see any other questions. Gone 52 minutes. That's pretty good. You boys got anything else for me? I'll give it a minute. If not, I might just get on off and make something to eat. Watched the last quarter of the Georgia game. I think they won, but I didn't see it. I had to run to the store. They were looking bad in the first half, but South Carolina always does that crap to us. The yellow perch haven't been overharvested. The perch were victims of an invasive species. Yeah, no, man. You think somebody went into Lake Michigan and overharvested the yellow perch? No, that's not what happened. You're giving fishermen way too much credit. That ain't disrupting Lake Michigan. They don't even keep enough fish to keep the bass populations from stunting in Atlanta, Georgia. Thanks, Rich, man. I appreciate you. No, man. People don't understand, like, any of this stuff. Oh, Frank's got a good question. How many studies did I read or conduct about bed fishing? Well, 0. And let me tell you why. Because let's go. We talked about, you guys have been here since the beginning of this conversation. We talked about the forestry school, right? So the forestry school at Georgia does not play. Not even a little. They don't even have football players in there. They won't adjust the classes for them. You can either major in forestry or you can not play football, or you can play football and not major in forestry. That's how they look at that. So, get another one coming through there. So let's use the forestry school about, forestry school has got that money and got because they do research projects for Georgia Pacific and other paper companies that need that data. They need to know how to make toilet paper and grow trees and do research. So there's a direct correlation between profits of a major corporation and, people like Georgia Pacific, they don't play, that's a major hitter. So they give the school grant money to run studies. Well, there's no business like that for fisheries. The only people who make any money in fisheries are lure salesmen and pro fishermen being sponsored by lure companies. So what gain is it of a lure company to donate money to the university to do a bed fishing study? How are they going to use that information? And you know what I mean? You're not going to see studies like that. So that's why we don't have any fishery studies to give us this information, because nobody's given grant money for anybody to study fish. And even when they do get grant money to study fish, they're usually studying some crap they already studied. So there's not a lot. I mean, there is a lot of fisheries related research in the world, and you can go back and read all of it. I've had to go through a bunch of it, but it's old. It's over the last 70 years, 80 years. You'll be going back through the science library digging stuff up. But I can give you my opinions on bed fishing. It doesn't hurt them. It doesn't hurt them a bit. These dudes don't know anything about bass reproduction. Female bass don't spawn once. You guys know that? They'll lay eggs in multiple nests over several weeks, and if it cools off, their eggs can hold eggs for 60 days. If they start spawning and it cools off and they want to shut down, they can shut down for 2 months till the weather comes back and go right back to spawning. Right? It's like there's so much misinformation floating around the internet. Like, let's put it this way: the misinformation floating around the internet about lake management is 80 years behind. Yeah, Jim, I'm sure he has. The reason I say 80 years is that's when most of this fisheries research started, about 100 years ago. So literally all the information that's going around on the internet doesn't have anything to do with science. It's just all hearsay, groupthink, bullcrap. I'll tell you, man, if I don't know, I don't know. If I didn't read it in school or I don't have any experience with it, I'll tell you, I don't know, man. But what I won't do is do like those clowns, those bass fishing clowns, and just make up whatever. That's what they've been doing too, man. They were pros and they were popular. So it got into their ego, and they got away with their entire life. They've got away with literally just making this stuff up. However they think it wants to click in their head and start talking about this stuff, they just say it, and everybody believes them, and they're dead wrong. So, industry money. Yep, industry money. That's a good word. I got to remember that one. Good term. Directing university research is a huge topic. Yeah, that is a good topic. Good idea, man. Well, Midwest, here's a perfect example of harvest, okay? If harvest is so bad for lakes and everything needs to be catch and release, and we got to keep all these fish with kid gloves, then why in the heck do ice fishermen not ruin the fishing up there? Because don't ice fishermen keep everything they catch? I've never seen an ice fisherman release a fish. The only time I ever saw it was on Grumpy Old Men. What was her name? Sophia Loren or whatever that lady's name was, threw it back through the ice hole. That's the only fish I've ever seen go back through an ice hole. Those boys put them in a cooler. Right? Am I wrong on that? They still do that, don't they? Or are they catch and releasing through those ice holes? I don't know. But go look at any of those lakes, little lakes up north. And ice holes. Pro bass fishermen are ice holes. Some of them, anyway. Some of them are cool, man. I met some cool fishermen, man. I don't mean to beat on all of them, but they're a pet peeve of mine because they don't know what they're talking about. But I can tell you this though, bro, I don't respect them very much. And the more people that follow me, I think the less people will follow them because they'll start to see exactly what I see. And they'll stop respecting them because it's gotten to the point now, especially with what I've been doing online and places I've been, they've seen it, they know. But what they don't know how to do is get out of it. They don't have the capability to go, I was wrong, or I need to learn something. They don't have anywhere to go. So it's them versus the truth now, and that's going to hurt them. They could have played nice. They didn't have to choose the war path, but they chose the war path. So the war path it is. Yeah, ice fishermen keep fish. That's what I thought. What's my take on forward facing? No big deal. It's all the same crap they said when side imaging came out. It's all the same crap they said when 2D sonar came out. Shoot, man. I'm good with a flasher. I love old hummingbird flasher. Y'all ever fish with those things? A hummingbird flasher was a bad little joker now. If you knew how to read a flasher, it could give you a lot of information. And in real time, too. Now, the difference between it was a flasher's giving you real-time information straight down, where a forward face is giving you real-time information going straight out and with better visuals and whatnot. But a flasher's in real time. So what's flashing on that flasher is under your boat at that moment. It's not, so I don't think it's any big deal at all. Now, what it will change is the pressure because there's going to be a lot less people just blind casting, right? As the technology evolves, people are going to start hunting. It's going to become like sight fishing, where you don't even really have to see them; you can see them on the screen. So when everybody knows, when the bass start getting that kind of pressure to them, it's going to turn. I think it'll probably the biggest advantage will be the kayak fishermen, the lower profile in the water, not displacing as much water, being quieter, and not running any electronics will give you an advantage when everybody starts running all that tech, because the bass are going to start getting real, sensitive to all those things because the people are going to be dead on them all the time. You know what I mean? So yeah. But as far as ruining the fishery, nah, you're giving fishermen too much credit. It might make it tough, give you lure resistance and make it hard to sell. But ruin it? Nah, ain't ruining nothing. I hear you, Frank, man. I hear you. I don't harvest as many fish as I should either, man. I really should. I mean, here's a perfect example. Let's just use real world examples, all right? That's what I like to do. Real walking around world stuff, not what you think is right, or what we kind of try to deduce, but stuff that we've seen done in the real world. So I was fishing out back behind the house here at Rodman, and the state biologist pulled up. The biologist for the lake pulled up and was doing interviews, the creel surveys. And I'm like, what in the world are you doing creel surveys for, man? Don't you got more important work? He laughed. And he said, yeah, but the creel survey guy quit and I need these creels. So he's out there taking creels. Anyway, his first question was, how many bass under 16 inches have you harvested from this lake today? And I said 0. He said, how many largemouth bass under 16 inches have you caught from this lake today? And I said 2. And he said, well, why didn't you keep them? And I said, that, sir, is a good question. So even in Rodman Reservoir, where they catch the 13-pound bass yesterday, 2 days ago, plenty of big fish in here. All the bass I've caught are above relative weight in Rodman. And I got the biologist asking me, why am I not harvesting bass under 16 inches? If that's not telling enough, like if that's not good enough for you, then you need to leave my page because I can't help you. I don't know what else to say. Salmon fishing. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, the salmon are going to die anyway, so people catch them and keep them. Sure, that makes sense. Oh, sure, Michael. He's talking about PCBs and stuff. Now, I've done some PCB testing on Superfund sites. Ooh. Yeah, man. You're talking about the most carcinogenic compound known to man. Don't eat those fish. If you've got PCB warnings, furan, dioxin warnings anywhere around you, don't eat the fish. But where you're going to find that stuff is around industry, right? Around old paper mills. Like right now, that's not like paper mills and crap are not releasing that crap in the environment now, right? They did that 100 years ago, 200 years ago, you know? The problem is, like PCBs have 1,000-year half-life. They ain't going to place. So once those were released 100 years ago, we still got 900 more years before they naturally break down. And that's what a Superfund site is. They go and dig all that crap out and fix it. I used to make good money working on Superfund sites back in the day. We make 25, 30 bucks an hour in the 90s, man, like 96, 97, 98, making $30 an hour and working 18, 20-hour days. Man, we used to kill it. Because when you go Superfund site, we go collect those fish, we would be up 5 in the morning, going back to bed midnight. My man Tony Dodd, I don't know, you guys probably don't know Tony, but he's not online or anything. Dude was the best biologist I've ever been around. Just money, just like dude was automatic. Knew every fish on the planet, Latin name, all of it. I mean, brilliant guy. And he could work, he could dive and stuff, and he would get me onto those PCB and furan dioxin jobs. Midwest was coming back through. PCBs and dioxins were why he went to law school. No kidding. Good for you, man. That's cool shit. Yeah, dude. Those Superfund sites were. I'm sure they're still there. I just don't do that kind of work anymore. Anyway, my buddy Tony, man, I learned so much from that guy. Working on those sites and sampling with him, that it was invaluable. And that's what I'm talking about too, man. Like, I'm kind of unique in that way where, all right, let's say you go talk to a state biologist. All right. Well, what's he done? He went to college, sure. But what's he done? Well, he went over here to Rodman Reservoir and got a job, and he's managing, because when you're a biologist, the only place you're going to get a job is for the state of Florida, state of Georgia, state of Mississippi, right? I was very lucky. I got very lucky to run my own business in lake management. It's hard to do. And I guess what I'm getting at is you can go get a college degree, right, and know that. Where are you going to get 30 years experience? It's going to take you 30 years. And you're going to have to do it the whole time. See, I don't know anybody like me. Well, take that back. About 3 people like me. But I'm not trying to brag either. I'm just saying, man, I've done it, and I'm not kidding. I'm not BSing. And I'm just telling people what I did at work. That's pretty much it. The state forced GE to dredge. Oh, yeah, dude. Ridiculous. This is an understatement. I know where that is, man. In Wisconsin. Sure. Yeah. I've never been there, but I've read about it. That's how I ended up down here, man. I sold that place in Georgia. They paying ridiculous money for houses. So I sold my house in Georgia, moved down to Florida just to be around better fishing. It's been awesome too, man. I've been going to the coast. I ain't gonna lie, man. I hadn't been bass fishing. I like going to the coast, catching red drum. I caught a 120-pound tarpon, which almost gave me heat stroke. Hooked that big joker at 2 o'clock in the afternoon about a month ago, and man, it was like trying to pull a dang worn winch off a truck. It pulled me around a good 45 minutes. It was an experience and a half. But no, I just like to fish, man. And well, going back to that, like, so experience matters a lot, right? Like, so you can go get a college degree, but if you've never worked on ponds, you know, or you just did the one or two ponds or whatever, you wouldn't be able to. I say, I wouldn't even. I think that's why too. I wouldn't be able to articulate this way without 30 years experience, because for the last 30 years I've been. If you hit me up, this idea that I got for this thing here is my business phone line, live. If you call me with a lake, we're going to have conversations just like this. And the only way to get good at talking about this stuff to people who don't know what you're talking about is to have conversations like this. And that's what I've been doing forever. So that's how we got here. Check the messages one more time. We still got 7 folks in here. I appreciate you guys, man. Really do. Hope it helps. I don't see any other questions. If you guys got anything else for me, I'll take it. Otherwise, I'm going to go get some. I don't know what I'm going to get. Maybe some salami, cheese, glass of wine, maybe a beer. I don't know. Something. I'm going to go get something. Getting a payout. $750. All right, boys. I appreciate you listening, and I'll be back next weekend. I'm going to go do lives every weekend. Maybe I should go live before Debo. I can go live for an hour or so and then just switch over and go talk to Debo. I like watching Debo. Yeah, fish consumption and mercury is a hassle. I did a study on that one time, man. I was talking to a guy who had a PhD in mercury, and it was like in the Savannah River. They were testing. Somebody was getting in trouble because they were saying they were releasing mercury, too much mercury. They changed the law. The politicians changed the law to reduce the mercury numbers. Like you should be releasing less mercury into the environment. So they tested the water, and there's excessive amount of mercury for the new regulations. So everybody started getting in trouble. Well, they figured out that there was, mercury is naturally occurring. It's an element. So above where all the industry was some naturally occurring mercury that was getting everybody fined for naturally occurring mercury is the moral to that story. Yeah, you think? I think so, man. Debo usually goes live about 8:30, right? Yeah, I just go live about 7, and then just switch over and talk to those guys. That's a good idea. Anyway, I'm out of here, boys. Hospital incinerators produce a lot of mercury. Yeah, that makes sense, man. Probably in like fillings and stuff, man. So thanks for staying, Kev. Crappy Kev, appreciate you. Appreciate you a lot, my friend. All right, boys, I'm out. Talk to y'all next weekend.